friends. I'm finally back. I've been working on all sorts of things, trying to get better backgrounds, which I'm still trying to iron out the wrinkles with. Um, Cameras, lights, and well, action. Here we are. So the process of getting the best programs for recording and getting situated, so I'm accustomed to doing this, continues. And in the meantime, I truly hope to have more content much more frequently soon. I'm on a big learning curve, so I appreciate you understanding in advance, but I'm back. So let me start with the 30-day challenge that I had participated in November briefly. There are some just amazing people that were part of that challenge that were sponsored the challenge, and I have listed them as friends of the channel on my channel, although I will preface that with understanding, please. They really don't know me other than knowing that I participated in their challenge. Maybe they ended up with about 600 people worldwide in the challenge, and it was aptly called the Shadow Work Challenge. Bryce from Esoteric Atlanta outlined the daily activities exceptionally, and all of the other co-sponsors were amazing as well. They offered a lot of support and other programs to complement all of the Ashtanga yoga that Bryce offers. So I just want to do everything I can to support them, even though they don't really know me. Their material and what they bring to the world is truly special and exceptional. So that is why I've listed them as friends of the channel. Of course, I hope someday that we can all become friends, but I don't want to, and I consider them, I'm friendly toward them as acquaintances, but I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that I'm trying to sidle in, so to speak. I'm not. I realize my place. At any rate, please check them out. If you're not already subscribed to all of them, I encourage you to do that. I also listed another favorite of mine, the original Marxie, because I do keep an eye on the worldwide currency reevaluation. He does a great job with the daily news. So when the mainstream media fails, go check out the original Marxie. He's fabulous. Oh, there is a roundtable discussion, if you haven't already seen it on my channel, from the 30-day shadow work challenge, where I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to be interviewed with two challengers, and Bryce interviewed all three of us on her channel. She has just some amazing content. All of the sponsors of the challenge too, as I've said before. Let's see, what else do we have here for our discussion list today? I do apologize that things have been a little stagnant for me getting content on the channel. It really has been quite the process of taking on the 30-day challenge, establishing new habits all over the place in my life, including this. So at the end of the 30-day challenge, on the last day, we were encouraged to pursue something we were afraid of. I must say, while I felt that I had already tackled that to a degree, I have not been making consistent content. So that is important to me. I had wanted to actually go live today, that's scary. I'll be frank. I don't know, there's no Frank around here, but that is scary to go live. But YouTube won't let me yet. I've got to wait until tomorrow, they say, before I can actually try to do a live. So, and I'm not sure I'll be able to do one tomorrow. I'm a little behind on some other activity. I do try to get research done daily, and I'm behind on my research work for the state national stuff. So bear with me. More content is coming, and I will be brave and attempt to do a real live show. I really want to encourage everyone, much like I did in my introduction video, to do self-work. The shadow work challenge that I was just speaking about is a perfect example of an excellent place to start on self-work. That's why it's called shadow work. If you haven't heard that terminology, it causes you to, by virtue of doing regular exercise, it actually brings out other emotional and or spiritual issues that you surprisingly may not have realized were there. So I feel like that's extremely important in these times. That's how we are all raising our vibration and moving up to the next dimension, going from 3D to 4D and then 5D, right? So please check that out. And, it's not the only means, but it was certainly amazing. I'm going to put a link for when Bryce was first talking about the challenge. There's a lot of shadow work stuff out there. I would recommend Bryce's 30-day challenge with the rest of the sponsors highly. Nonetheless, I saw something I'd like to put a link in the description for. Very compelling. I've never been a big Glen Beck fan per se. I don't have anything against him. I never really got into listening to podcasts until just a few years ago. And now I really don't watch regular TV at all. He has his shorts on YouTube for his channel. And he had one that was just super compelling and interesting to me. He's sharing a personal experience with a dream that he had I think it was about 10 years ago, something like that. I'll put the link in the description. Only about 10 minutes. Like I said, it's a short. And wow, I mean, to see a public figure like that, that's so well known as Glen Beck, talk about a personal dream. Another figure that he knows, he doesn't give the name, but clearly it must be a prominent religious figure in the community that he knows personally, confirming that dream, even though he did not know about it. And the ultimate outcome, I'm not going to give away because I hope you'll go and watch it. 10 minutes. It's worth it. I promise. I'll put it in the description. And then the second topic that I wanted to bring up, I have some interesting material with regard to state nationalism. One of the keys to getting your feet wet, to starting to understand state nationalism, some of the pitfalls and caveats that can come up with that, is understanding, not the best word to always use, by the way, simply because of exactly what I'm talking about right now, comprehending the importance of proper diction, because that can trip you up. And words that we think we know, we may not actually know. That is why I named this episode, Who is You? So I'm going to share a document, read some more important parts of it, and hopefully this will help you understand this a little bit, or get you started anyway. Achilles' heel is you. Who you are is no longer the question. The question is, who is you? The word you gets more people in trouble than any other word currently utilized within our legal and financial systems. It is virtually impossible to fully explain the proper grammatical usage of the word you insofar as proper English is concerned. Now, I'm not going to read the actual definitions here. I think that you guys can do that. You're welcome to look them up. That's an easy one. But I do want to skip down here to the notes section, and it'll define itself with the explanation here around the word you. Note, though you is properly a plural, it is in all ordinary discourse used also in addressing a single person, yet properly always with a plural verb. No confusion there. Loosely, the word you is a pronoun that cannot be properly grammatically used according to English language rules. When spoken, you is commonly heard by everyone present, as if it were being addressed to each of them individually in a singular sense. We erroneously hear a singular inclination of the properly plural expression, as in one speaking to a group and saying, I'm happy to share this with you. Properly, you is indeed plural, yet the word you is often spoken as if it were in reference to a singular man or woman. In such instances, the word you induces a natural inclination for everyone in an audience to hear it as being addressed singularly to a specific individual within that audience, particularly if the word you follows an antecedent noun, as in when speaking to that same group and saying, "Yes, George, I'm happy to share this with you." In law, this word you is properly utilized in all ordinary legal discourse when addressing the singular mind or the single party with volition within the plural nature construct of a person. I'm going to say that again. The singular mind within the plural nature construct of a person. This is going to talk about person a little bit too. That's another one that we often misuse. The person being comprised of a man or woman that answers for or is liable for that person, and the corporate entity that is that person. In this sense, addressing a person as you is actually as close to a proper use of the word you as anyone could imagine. Thus, the personal pronoun you, being both singular and plural, properly addresses the essential plural nature of the single person entity. The key to benefiting from this is to grasp who the correct plural components are within that single person entity. So here are some thought-provoking examples. A judge might say, "Mr. Smith, I find you guilty." The question arises then, who is this particular you, considering you is plural? The answer may well be in the judge's next question. "Mr. Smith, do you have anything to say?" Notice the judge is not properly asking if Mr. Smith has anything to say. He is rather improperly asking John Smith if you has anything to say. Thus, whoever answers voluntarily defines himself as being in joinder with you and concurrently accepts the guilty verdict for the person, Mr. Smith. Check out any court transcript you can find, and in not one instance will you ever find an example of a judge saying, "I find you, Mr. John Smith, guilty." Likewise, find someone high up in the banking system that alleges that you owe their bank money. You will never get them to say, "John Smith owes X amount of dollars to this bank, and therefore John Smith must pay X amount of dollars to this bank." Rather, they will only always ever say something like, "You owe X amount of dollars to this bank, therefore you must pay X amount of dollars to this bank." Even a judge's order will say something like, "John Smith, I order you to pay." Even when asked directly to just repeat, "John Smith owes X dollars to the bank," they will either terminate the conversation or continue to ask, "Are you John Smith?" And when you respond with yes, they repeat that, "Then you owe X dollars to their bank." When asked directly while on a telephone conversation if they intend to continue to refuse to say John Smith owes X dollars to their bank, they generally just get angry and hang up. I guess we all should be looking for you, since you is the one, and apparently the only one, that can be found guilty or that must pay whatever is owed. Check out collection notices. Again, it is always you that must pay, or action will be taken against you. This is not just silly grammar, and there is good reason to explain it this way. Okay, here's why. You, in legal and financial discourse, which differs from otherwise normal language, refers to the duality inherent within and of the party that is liable for the essential plural nature of the single person corporate entity, or who at least is prepared to volunteer to accept responsibility and or liability thereto. The person, aka the estate, is at minimum comprised of a decedent and an executor, hence the duality, plurality of its nature, which justifies correctly addressing it with the inherent plurality of the word you. You see, a person without its executor has no volition and thus cannot answer to anyone, judge or banker included. Only a man or woman can answer. The problem arises in that men are outside or above the jurisdiction of judges and bankers, i.e., only a person may commit an offense. Remember, a person is a corporate entity. Hence, a judge will not ask a man per se or a woman per se, nor will he ask the person to answer. He will only ask you to answer, in hopes that a man will volunteer to respond as and for the plural you. He also knows very well that he cannot directly ask the person to answer, because a person is a fiction entity, aka corporate being without volition and cannot answer. Judges and bankers also know that all persons are domiciled offshore, corporate bodies registered in foreign jurisdictions. Hence, they have no domestic jurisdiction over those persons. Therefore, it would be futile to find a person guilty, or to attempt to force a person to pay a debt or to pay taxes. Who paid the tax in the Messiah's day? Well, not the sons or the domestic ones, but rather the strangers and the foreigners. Thus, the CRA collects the tax, aka they revenue it, from a person domiciled in a foreign jurisdiction so they can comply with Scripture. Hence, it is not futile to find a man to volunteer to be you, because you can indeed be found guilty and you can be ordered to pay debts and taxes. And in most cases, historically at least, you has very obediently served the sentences and paid the debts and the taxes for and as the foreign persons. Remember, a person is a corporation, and besides, only a you, aka a man acting concurrently as a man or woman, as a decedent within the construct of a person, can answer a question or pay a debt or taxes or cause them to be paid for as or on behalf of that foreign person. Many have heard that sometimes when a man informs the judge that the judge has been appointed as trustee, the judge will dismiss the case, but not always. You is also directly related to the reason for this seemingly inconsistent behavior. In truth, the person is legally considered an estate for a decedent. The decedent or dead man constitutes the basis or claim of right to the property of the estate, aka person. Only an executor of an estate can make appointments, such as those of trustee or beneficiary. If a man appoints a judge as the trustee, then initially the judge will correctly presume that you, the man, not you, the person, has assumed your rightful role as executor of the subject estate. And unless the judge can trick you, the man, into admitting that you, the man, is not the executor, without asking you, the man, directly, the judge will continue on his presumption and dismiss the case against the plural you, the person. The judge knows that if you, the man, is the executor, that you, the man, can indeed appoint him as trustee and concurrently hold him liable as a trustee. However, if you, the mistaken man, claims to be or lets himself be tricked by the judge into being something like a grantor or a beneficiary of an undefined or allegedly undisclosed or implied trust, as opposed to executor of the subject estate, then the judge will rapidly find you, the person, guilty, because he will then replace himself as the de facto executor. Oh, and get over the false and silly idea that it matters or that the court even cares whether or not you, the man, write the name of the person's estate in all capital letters, a combination of upper and lowercase letters, or Chinese symbols. It does not matter. The person is still defined as an estate of a decedent registered in a foreign jurisdiction, regardless of how you write its name. You can, and more importantly, you do, make joinder with the person's estate, regardless of how its name is written, simply when and by answering to you, inasmuch as I am me, who is you. So the moral of the story is, it might take you a minute to wrap your brain around this, but be very careful when you respond to someone calling you, the man or woman, you, because they may be speaking of you, the person. I hope that makes sense. It is quite confusing, but I found that to be a fun way to open the subject on the importance of words and use of words, or rather diction, in regards to state nationalism and why it's so important. It's actually important to all of us. And I think that paper probably made the point. I cannot take credit for writing that. I do not know who wrote it. I found it in one of the Telegram chats for state nationals that I use for research. So I thought it was very thought compelling and it might be really good to share. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I also have this book. I think I'm going to start reading this book, The Power of the Powerless. It's on Václav Havel. Pardon me, I do not speak Czech, so I may be butchering this man's name. I'm going to just quick read the intro on this. It's very short, so you'll know what it's about. It seems to be very relevant to today in the times that we're going through. I'll preface that with saying one of the things I hear a lot of people say these days is, well, we don't want to live in the past. Well, no, we don't want to live in the past, but that is actually one of the exact reasons we don't want to forget the past. When we forget the past, we forget the lessons we learned, and we in turn end up reliving it. And in some cases, it's way worse than it was the first time or the second time. So that's why I'd like to read this book, or this is actually based on an essay. I'm just going to read the intro so you'll know. Václav Havel. Václav Havel was born in Prague on 5 October 1936. The son of a film producer, Havel first distinguished himself as a poet and playwright in Prague's burgeoning theater world. The Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia saw Havel aiding a resistance for which he was later banned from theater work. Living under Soviet occupation and having to work as a brewer, Havel became increasingly politically active and was eventually imprisoned for 3 years following the publication of his essay, The Power of the Powerless. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989, Havel became president of Czechoslovakia, and he was later elected the first president of the Czech Republic. Havel returned to the theater after retiring from political life, writing 2 new plays before his death on 18 December 2011. So not only is it relevant to our times today, in my opinion, it's also pretty recent. That'll be something I have in a separate podcast. We'll have to read in sections, of course. Make sure I go through my notes so I don't miss anything. Oh my gosh, see, notes are important. I had a very interesting experience this morning. I happened to catch a live show, so I jumped in a chat for a minute in between things. And there was, I'm guessing it was a man, and he made a comment about, there was a good discussion in chat. It was somewhat political. There were a lot of quote unquote patriots, and, people were very excited about, we need to see an end to this, and this has been going on for too long. And, there was a lot of talk on that. Oh, it was with Roseanne and Derek Johnson and Tom Number. So go check that out. It's from December 7th today. It was very good. But so I was trying to, because people were being so patriotic, just try to get the word out there a little bit about state nationalism to spur interest. I like to drop little snippets just to try to get people to think about it and hopefully get them to do some research, you know. And so this person had made a comment about how it was taking too long and uh, they needed to hurry up. So I made a comment back about how we needed to meet the military halfway and stand up and, perhaps consider becoming a state national. That's one avenue to consider, a peaceful way of approaching, a halfway point to meet the military. We don't want to just sit around and act frustrated and, oh, where's the military? No, we need to stand up and help too, in my opinion. So I'm trying to encourage that in a positive, peaceful way. And his comment back was, oh, well, something along the lines of, if that's what it takes, I've already served enough time in jail. I was just really taken back. It was right at the very end of the show. I'm sure you can go replay the chat and see it. And I wanted to make a comment about that because we need to remember something. If you really think that you're going to get thrown in jail for doing research, because I can tell you right now, becoming a state national, if you do your research and educate yourself, is not going to get you thrown in jail. You'll educate yourself on how to support your standing, and they will have no grounds to put you in jail. In fact, they will have less grounds to put you in jail than they do as a citizen of a corporation. So it made me sad that someone would be so patriotic and then on one hand, and then on the other, talk about how they immediately thought they were going to get thrown in jail, basically just for researching becoming a state national. I don't think that's what he thought. I think that he was jumping to conclusions and didn't really think through that response. But hopefully my point will be clear. If people are afraid that they will be thrown in jail for trying to become a state national, I would like to remind them that that's not going to happen from you just doing research. Fortunately, we are not quite living in a communist situation at this time. You are still able to do research, and I would encourage you to do that. So hopefully I don't get myself in trouble asking you to do research. Just educate yourself, and you might decide that you like the idea of being free. That was important, I thought. So that's it. On a positive note, there are two things I'd like to say in closing. One of them is something I like to remind myself to remember that, hey, God's got this, aka Yahweh's got this. That means we've got this. Number two, we have to remember that we live in an amazing, transformative time. I want to sincerely thank each individual that is present, has been here in the past, and will be here in the future for their contribution to this change in our shared existence is important. And it couldn't happen without you. That's it. Thank you. See you next time.